that'll join us maybe a little bit further into the presentation. That's all right. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Diana Fiorentino. I am the internal communications manager here at WPI. I'm joined today by my illustrious colleagues, Mariah Donahue, who's our web marketing support manager, Ashley Dill, who's the content specialist here on marketing communications, and Julia Quinchajul, who's the director of digital communications and content strategy. So we're really excited to get rolling on these sessions today. This is the first in a series of knowledge sharing collaboration sessions that we're going to be hosting throughout the course of this summer and probably into the fall as well. These sessions are meant to provide an overview of resolutions, tips for common challenges that you might face within Drupal. So this one's going to be just kind of an overview of Drupal. So some of the information that you hear today may be a bit redundant with some of the work that you've done already within the tool. But we're thinking this might be a great refresher for some of you, and also a good opportunity to maybe learn some new ways of accessing information and doing things that you haven't maybe seen before. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat throughout, or you can wait till the end. There will be a portion of the agenda closer to the end where we're going to do Q&A. So with that, I will hand things over to Mariah, who's going to kick us off.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
So yeah, as Diana said, today we're going to do really nice general overview of Drupal, and especially Azure capabilities as admins, and a little bit how that differs from other members on your team. So I'll go on to the next slide. First, right down to the basics, how to log into Drupal and what it's going to look like once you get in there. So I'm going to keep switching back and forth between Drupal and our PowerPoint here. When you're logging into Drupal, my best recommendation for logging in is this URL, wpi.edu/user/login. And that's going to bring you to this page where you see the big WPI login button. And you would just use your regular WPI single sign-on credentials. So once you're logged in, this is how it's going to look on your page, and you'll know that you're logged in when you have this bar at the top that has your profile. You can go to the home, and you have a shortcuts bar. So let's see what your shortcuts bar looks like. So if you click here on shortcuts with the little star, you have a few options. You can look through your own content. You can search through content that's already in the site. You can see scheduled content, and you can search for files. And then, of course, our Drupal resources and profile instructions. I would say definitely the most common for you will be My Content. This is where you'll see all of the groups that you are a member of, because Drupal and its pages, all of its content, and all of its members are separated into little groups that also kind of coincide with your departments. So you are all an admin of at least one group. So this is where you will see those groups, and then whether or not you can add a member over here. And then underneath your content, you'll see all of the other groups that exist in Drupal, as well as their respective group admins. So if there's ever a case where you think that maybe if you do a little work with another department and you think that maybe you want access to their Drupal content, this is where you will find who to contact to get access to that group. So to go into one of your own groups, you'll see under here group names. This Gompy user, he is a member of marketing communications. So if I click on marketing communications, that will bring him right into all of the content that belongs to marketing. Today, because we'll be generally going over pages, page layout, we won't go too far into other content, but you can see that this is where you would add other content such as an announcement or an event. And then you can go back and see all of the members that are in the group as well. And you can view the settings for the group. So I'll go back to notes, and this is where all of the pages live. So I've made this page called Drupal Knowledge Sharing Sessions for our training purposes today. So a lot of questions that we get are, what kinds of things can you edit as users versus what kind of things can CMS and us admins have to do? One of the biggest examples would be our site menu. If you ever want to make any changes to the menu that's being displayed on your page, then you would submit a ticket to CMS help. But when you're on the page, you'll see that you have these three main tabs up here at the top: view, edit, and layout. So we'll go in and look at the permissions in there more specifically. So now I'm in the edit tab. I like to describe the edit tab more as the settings of the page versus really how the page looks. So in the edit tab, you'll see that you can add a subtitle. I'm going to fill in these fields so that with these general descriptors so that we can see them after we save and look at the page. So this is where we would add the subtitle, a hero image, or we can add some content to the body. The body, or also known as the value proposition, is always going to be the first paragraph of content that someone sees when visiting your site. And then we also have this contact and social media tab here if you wanted to change the information that's being pulled for that contact block. So we have lots of options here. You could also hide it if you would like, but you can change the email, phone, fax, where it's located on campus, which office you're affiliated with, and any social media links. I love this tip over here. You can see that whatever groups that the page or announcement or whichever you're looking at, you can see what it belongs to. So especially if you're a member of multiple groups, this will be helpful to make sure where your content's located. All right, so I added some text here for the body and a subtitle. So I'm going to scroll down all the way to the bottom and click Save. You'll see next to Save, we have this Unlock button. If you unlock the page, that's giving other users access to the page. While you're in here editing it, only one person can edit it at a time. But once you save it, it will also automatically unlock. So I'm going to save it, and that's automatically going to bring us back to the page. So you can see I added the subtitle here and the body.
Can I also mention, Mariah, if you unlock it but don't click save, it will not save what you just did. It will just unlock it, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. You always have to save your work, unless you don't want to, unless you want to start over. So now let's explore the layout. So I have the layout tab up here right next to the edit tab. And this is going to bring us into the fun stuff. And like Ashley mentioned, so we have some different options up here. It looks different than the edit tab. Up here is where you would save the layout. So after you make some changes, you would click on Save Layout, or you can discard changes, and it's always going to double check if you're sure that you want to discard your changes, and you would either click Confirm or you have the chance to cancel. And then you can also unlock, which will discard your changes if you didn't already save them, and unlock the page for other users to use it. All right, so this is what the layout builder looks like. What we already have here is the default sections every time a new page is built. So say, for example, you submitted a ticket to CMS Help and you said, I need a new page for my group, for my department. And we added the page in for you, and you asked that we leave it blank. You're going to have already, it's going to pull in anything that was in the settings. That is the page name, the subtitle, if you added an image, and then the second section will pull in the body, the menu, and that contact that you set over there. So these are already here by default. Now, we'll talk about adding sections. If you're familiar, if you've been in here before, maybe you've seen our blocks, and you can do that by adding a block into your pre-existing section that is here by default, or you can add a new section. When you add a new section, you have 3 different options. We'll go through each one. Let's start with one column. This is if you want just one column of content that's going to stay straight down. So we have a few options for the width. Contained is going to be how it looks here, or you can do full width. So let's see how full width looks. And then I'm going to click add section. And you can see that that expands for the entire width of my screen. So now I will add a new section. I'll keep it to one column again, and we'll see what max width looks like. Max width is a little bit less than full width, but it gives you some margins. So I'm going to choose max width and add section. And you can see that it's a little bit bigger than if we had our contained, and also smaller than the entire full width. Now that we have our sections in there, we can always go back and change the width. So I will change this one back to contained and then click update, and it'll bring it back in. Now let's explore 2 columns. If you want 2 columns of content side by side, this is a great option, especially to break things up. But you will see when you have 2 columns, and same for 3 columns, we don't have as many options as we do for the 1 column. You can either have it be just a regular side by side, or we can have full width as well. But let's see how it looks with non-full width. I'm going to click add section, and you can see my 2 columns at the same width as the regular contained 1 column section. Or I can go in and click on configure section. I can change it and say that I want full width and click update. And now that's expanding both of my columns to full width. Now I'm going to add another section and do the same for 3 columns. And you'll see that the 3 columns is the same width as 1 contained section. And then I will go back and change it to full width to see how that looks. Click update, and again, it's the full width of the screen. So those are sections. Oh, if you want to, you could also delete sections, but keep in mind, if you added any blocks in here, it is going to delete all of the blocks that you added. So we'll see how it looks when we just delete an empty section. We didn't lose anything because there was nothing in there. And then we'll show another example when we add some blocks in. All right. Now that you have your sections, or we'll start with just the one, I prefer sometimes this this one that's the max width, that's not exactly full width, or contained. This is great for breaking it up. So let's just try that one. So first, when you click on add block, this first panel will open, and you'll see just a couple options here: announcements, events, and news. In the next set of sessions, we'll get more into that type of content, like announcements, events, and news. But this is where you would add those those blocks that are pulling that information in. But to use our content blocks, you have to click on Create Content Block. And this is where you will see all of the options that we have for content blocks that we have a full YouTube playlist of tutorials on. But I will use just some of our most common blocks for the training purposes. So definitely our most common is body text. And that's because body text is very simple. It's just your standard text editor with a title, subtitle, and a text editor. So I would say this is a body text block. I'm adding to the subtitle field, and I'm adding to the body. Once everything looks good here, I'll click Add Block. And then you'll see how this block was pre-styled to display the content that I provided. And now that we've added a block, I'm going to scroll all the way to the top and click Save because I don't want to lose my content. And you can see how that max width looks. Now, because I want to go back in, I'm going back into the Layout tab. And I'd like to add some blocks to a 2-column layout, but I changed my mind and I don't want it to be full width anymore. So I, again, can go back in to Configure section, uncheck full width, and click Update. Now it's brought it back down to the size. I will click Add Block, and I will click Create Content Block. And let's try a highlight box. Again, title, pre-title, and body. A highlight box allows you to add images and links as well, but for these purposes, I will just have these standard fields. It also requires that I choose a background color. We have a few options: white, gray, and black. I'll stick with white to keep it simple. And then once I like how this looks, I'll click Add Block. And there's my highlight box. Now, you can always just drag and drop blocks in between sections. So say I want to grab this body text block that I made before and drag it all the way down to my 2-column layout. I'm dragging and then I dropped it. And here it is. So now that I think that this looks good, I'll scroll back up to the top and click Save Layout. And I have them side by side. So let's go back into the layout. And now that I have a couple blocks, let's explore what we can do with the blocks once we've already added them in. So each block is always going to have this little pencil icon on it. And when you click, you have a few options. The most important would probably be Configure. That is how you edit a block that you've already created. So I'll click this pencil icon and then I'll click on Configure. And I can change anything that I already put in here. So I'll say changing the subtitle, excuse me, the pre-title. And then of course, scroll down and click Update. And that's updated my, my highlight box here. Some other options we have, we can remove the block. Again, like when we were discarding changes, when you choose to remove something, Drupal is always going to double check to make sure that, do you want to remove this, because you cannot get it back. And you can change your mind and say cancel, and it's still there. Toggle hidden is also a helpful tool. If you click toggle hidden, it's going to hide the block. And it will show you this gray box so that you, as the page editor, know that this block is still in there and that it's hidden. But when we go and save the layout, we don't see it anymore because we've hit it. Now I'll go back into the layout and then say I want that block back. I will click toggle hidden again, and it's back. A new feature that we have as well is clone. I will soon be making a tutorial on this, but if you clone, it's going to do exactly as it sounds and completely recreate the block. So I will give it this description, clone, and then I'll click on clone. And it's always going to bring it into the same section. So that's a fun little sneak peek of a new feature that we have. And then of course I'm going to go and save it. And those are a few blocks. Let's see an example of some blocks that may not look good in their respective sections. With the 2-column layout, there's not much to worry about, but when we have 3 columns, especially if we configure 3 columns to not be full width, it's important to keep in mind that those 3 columns are still only going to be so wide. So we don't want to put any content in there that looks like it's going to get really squished. So let's see an example. I'm going to click add block and create content block. I'll create a body text block. And then I'm going to use my lorem ipsum generator to get a bunch of text. That was the plan. And my lorem ipsum, oh, I've got it. Never mind. All right, so I'll copy a bunch of text to see how that's really going to get squished in this 3-column layout. So I'll click add block. And we can see that that makes that very, very long, especially when we go and save it. And we can see that that's really long. So you can imagine that if we had this text, especially multiple times, that's really tough on the eyes to read. So that's just an example of when and where we should have certain content. So if you had this much content, I would suggest maybe putting it in a 1 column so that it expands to a greater width. All right, and that's what I had on the layout and the edit. So we're good for questions, comments, Q&A. I can't see the Zoom, so I wouldn't know if there's questions in the chat that came up, or if anyone wants me to go over something again, let me know.
If you're more comfortable writing in the chat for a question, that's fine as well. We can answer it. Or if anything you want to share that you found that works for you when you've been using Drupal, or something that's you've discovered that you've really liked about Drupal for certain features, you can share it here as well.
Has anybody had any problems when they're doing things like this? Mariah, that was super helpful, especially with showing the different widths of the columns and, depending on the amount of content that you have to make sure it's placed in the right block size and width and that kind of thing really makes a huge difference. I'm just curious if anybody on the call has had any problems or any success when they're trying to set up pages. Have any of you stumbled, or is it something that you're just trying to do? Okay, thanks, Liz. You've had no issues. Are there any features that you have had issues with? Because we're also, getting feedback for anything that we might do in the future. We're trying to figure out if people have knowledge of all of these things and they're looking for a little bit more. Please let us know if there are certain things that you haven't been able to do or that you've stumbled on that you think we could go over for you.
And if you think of something after this session and you want to email us, please feel free to do that as well. We're always looking for feedback and what people need and what's going to be the most helpful.
Accordions. The accordions are such a good feature. I mean, we could. I'm not sure if everybody else knows what the accordions are.
We have a
Right,
million
do we have-
at the library, so we.
Yeah.
There's so much there. I guess one of the things that I noticed, and maybe this is just, I don't know the functionality, is there a way to use anchors for the accordion? Cause like we send someone a web page or a link to where their information is, but their information is within an accordion. And so then they have to scroll down the page and find the right accordion. Are there anchors, or is there a way to do a workaround with anchors? Because at this point, I think, I know you said that anchors, the accordions are a great feature, but for us, they're kind of stressful. And so we're thinking about getting rid of them on our pages in the website. So if you have other tips for how to better use accordions also, that would be great.
Liz, do you mean using, so you mean creating anchor links to provide like externally versus
Okay.
having anchors within the page?
Well, I mean, anchor, so let me pull up one of the library pages and show you kind of, won't take me long. 'Cause we have-
I know the the issue that you guys have in the
Yeah.
library with some of your accordions. That's definitely a mystery. But I think it's a result of Drupal migration and, you know, the spooky things that
Right.
these platforms can do.
Let me. I mean, this is all, I'm trying to find, there's one page that has like a gajillion that I'm trying to find. But basically, like, if we have more than. Policies, I think this one has 1 million. That's good enough. But like on this web page here, we don't, there's not a ton, actually, yeah, if you go down to the bottom in our collection section, at the bottom of that page, we have a bunch of accordions, and I just wonder, yes, is there a link that like you can, or an anchor that you can add that says like it automatically goes to this accordion, it is already open to the right information for the person that we're sending it to. Because you know, we don't, if they're going through if they already haven't found it on their own, we don't want to be like, oh, go look for it on this web page. We want to say, here's that exact information and here's where it lives within that accordion.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, if you submitted a ticket to the help desk, I'd be happy to look at this specifically for you. It is it's definitely a possibility. We've done it, and I know that the Division of Talent and Inclusion did it with their benefits guide that they transferred into Drupal, and they did a great job in there as well. So it's definitely a possibility. I think that's a great user experience when you're providing users with a specific location with this type of content. So yeah, it's definitely a possibility, and we can take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
So that's something that is more of a ticket, right? It's not something that.
Right, that's not
most-
something we can do on our end then.
Right.
Okay,
Right, and if it is, I would we'll let you know if it's something that you would be able to do as well. And if we have any tips for if you wanted to do it again on your own.
got it. Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else on the call who wanted to see the accordions to know a little bit more about those, or is everybody kind of familiar with what those do?
We can go over them. They're definitely a useful tool, especially on pages where you have like a lump sum of content. So I'll go back into the layout and show an accordion. So I'll add a second block to this section. And again, go back into create content block, and I'll choose accordion, the one right at the top. And then I will have a title. So you'll notice in Drupal that when you're adding a new block, sometimes you might have a couple title fields, and that's because every block, no matter how it's styled, has a title associated with it. It could also be described as the block description. And that's what you have the option to display or not display, but you do always have to add one. If you don't add one, you'll receive an error that the block doesn't have a title. So I'll show you here. I'll keep it displayed so that you can see it in action. Before an accordion block, I have this. You'll see I have an accordion item, one by default. So I will say this is accordion item 1, and I'll post some content in there. That's a lot, so I'm going to cut it in half. So again, your standard text editor. And then you can add another item, and then so this will add another accordion item. I will call this accordion item 2. And you have these options to start expanded. I'm also intrigued to see how that looks. I don't know if I've ever seen it in action, so I'm going to click on them to see. And then I'll click add block. And this will look different. Sometimes things will look different in this layout builder preview than if you save it. So I'm going to go in and save it. Save layout. All right, so you can see how these are already by default when I'm on the page expanded because of that checkbox that I clicked on. But it can condense it. So if you had a page with lots and lots and lots of content, this is a great option for being able to tuck it away a little bit. And you can see here how this title is different from this one. So there were the titles that were associated with the accordion items themselves, and then the name of the block. So we'll go back in and then I'm going to go and click on the pencil icon and click configure. I'm going to uncheck these boxes. And then I'll also hide the title. I'll click update. And here are accordions. Yeah, definitely a useful block.
Any other questions or comments? Anything you want to share? Any problems you've been having?
I think if anybody thinks of anything, you're more than welcome to send us questions, or if you decide over the next couple of weeks that you're experimenting and you're trying to do things after doing this and you want to join the next session and have questions or, stumbled in some area, please do. We're going to be having a couple of different sessions throughout the summer. The next one will be very much like this one, but if you have questions that you want to bring, obviously we would love to address them and answer them. We're just excited that everybody wants to learn a little bit more about Drupal and how to work within it. So thank you all for taking the time to join us today. Yeah, Mariah, this was awesome. Honestly, I'll be totally honest. I learned that about those three. I didn't realize I could even stretch those all the way across. So even I learned something today. So yay.
Yay. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Hope to see you next time.
Thanks, Mariah.
Thanks, bye. I don't know how to end the meeting. All right.